What is something that nobody believes about you, but is absolutely true? Story 1. I have a recurring dream world I go to every time I sleep, even naps. I know where the coffee shop is, I have a cat, and I know where the restaurants are, etc. What's weird is that a few weeks ago I had trouble sleeping and couldn't sleep for 3 nights. When I finally was able to sleep, I was right back into my dream world and I said, I really missed this place in my dream. Story 2. I once avoided getting struck by lightning while walking back from fishing alone in the high winter mountains. A thunderstorm was moving in and my fishing rod started shocking me like crazy while I was crossing the earthen dam at the reservoir, a very exposed location. I threw it to the ground and scrambled down the side of the dam as fast as possible. I pressed myself to the ground for around a minute. Once my hair stopped standing on end, I grabbed the rod and sprinted back to my campsite. It's been almost exactly 2 decades and I still avoid being outside in exposed areas during storms. Story 3. I technically helped save a guy's life by having the worst diarrhea ever. It was hunched over a toilet bowl, clutching my stomach and trying to read the ethnic slurs written on the stall door to distract myself from the pain bad. Ended up pushing our ETA back by 30 mins. I think I was 13 at the time. And my family was pissed. On the drive back, one guy was on the road behind us driving erratically. He ended up confronting us on an off-ramp, and we were able to call an ambulance. He was a diabetic, and he couldn't focus on the road, so he tailed us until we stopped. If we hadn't been there at that time, he could have been dead today. Story 4. When I was in primary school, it was recess time, and I was not paying attention as a soccer ball came flying down fast and hit me directly in the ear. It hit so hard it actually damaged my ear cartilage so badly, so now I have an elf ear LOL. I've told multiple people that, and for whatever reason they don't believe me. Story 5. I have a mostly invisible and thankfully mild form of cerebral palsy called flaccid hemiparesis. The right side of my body is significantly weaker than my left. Thanks to early intervention with physical therapy, I learned to walk and run with mostly no problems. Other fine and gross motor skills, swimming, athletics, throwing a ball, pretty much any task that requires fine motion with my right side, is extremely difficult for me. But to most people who aren't familiar or not examining me trying to find it, it's almost completely invisible. It's a weird thing to go through life technically having an invisible disability because my range of motion is extremely limited, but no one takes it seriously, and it feels dishonest to claim disability and deprive people who need more resources available when accessibility services are already paltry and the needs of disabled persons in the US go so deeply ignored. I can basically begin to do activities, but will never be able to do them well. I cannot swim properly because I cannot adequately coordinate motion between right and left. My girlfriend is a swim instructor and has been patient in trying to teach me, but can see that I struggle to even move in the water. I play soccer, and people get angry when I cannot use my right side at all. Musical instruments are extremely difficult for me because I cannot move individual fingers on my right hand. IDK why I'm even writing this, I just need to vent because it's a weird, lonely thing. I'm not impaired in my daily life in any substantial way. I just can't be good at physical activities, and my range of motion is extremely limited LOL, and my punishment is that no one will ever take it seriously when I express that. Story 6. I failed physics my last semester of my high school and my school refused to graduate me. But I was already accepted to college on an academic scholarship and they didn't care, so I just kind of moved on with my life. Then I got a full scholarship to law school. So now I have a BA and a JD, both from top 10 programs, but I still don't have a high school diploma and still don't know physics. Story 7. I've had dreams about stuff that happens later. Deja vu, I think. No idea how TF that works. Edit. To give a bit more context, recently I had a dream that had me walking in a mall near my house, and I bumped into a bald guy in a leather jacket. Around 3 weeks later, a friend and I were at that mall, and that exact guy bumped into me at the same spot. Kinda freaks me out. Story 8. I have ADD, and my mother thought I was a willful and obstinate child, who didn't need special tutors, but a good spanking once in a while to set me straight. But she reluctantly agreed to a reading tutor, because she felt that as a 8-year-old, 3rd grade, I should be able to read a child's book already. So she allowed the parochial school to put me in a special 1-hour tutoring program during English class. There were 8 students in the tutoring program for an hour, but me and another student got extra time with teacher, so it was definitely more than an hour. I was well into my 50s that my mother told me, "I was talking to cousin about you and all the difficulties you had in school, And she said the oddest thing to me. She said it sounded like you have ADD, and she is amazed you got as far as you did in school without help. I told her you don't have any of that ADD nonsense, but she began to list things that were just, it was you. She described you like she lived at our house. So now I believe you really do have ADD, and I want to know, how did you get through college with ADD? Years of special tutoring and counseling, mother. Edit, reading the replies, it seems we all had the same mother. Huh. Just to clarify, I loved my mother, and to say my relationship with her was complicated would be understatement. Story 9. That I am athletic and was a pro athlete. I was a professional athlete for 6 years, specifically track. I am well under 6 foot tall, very skinny, late 30s, balding white guy, bad eyesight, love anime and D&D. I dress like a nerd to boot. Everyone assumes I don't do any sports or am athletic. But I also run a 4.40 40-yard dash, a 4-minute 20-second mile just under 300 bench, about double my body weight, well over 300-pound squat, and am very agile. I can do standing backflips, dive rolls, all those ninja things, haha. Had D1 college offers and again ran professionally. IDK what it is, but my body doesn't look like the traditional athlete. I just hold my muscle different. Edit. Spelling, and I am under 6 foot tall, not 5 foot. That was a typo. Story 10, I'm unbreakable, I think. I have never been sick from major or minor issues. No colds, flu, stomach bugs, hospital visits, you name it. I have no idea what heartburn is. I'm in my 50s. And so far, not one trace of baldness or thinning hair. My resting heart rate is just above 50. I got hit by a car when I was a kid. Got hit, car then ran over my foot. Woman freaked out and backed over my foot. No broken bones. I slipped on wet steps, maybe a set of 10 or so. Yeah, I was running. Went flying, got some cool bruises. Never got hurt playing sports. I was in a mosh pit in the 90s and smashed heads with someone. He got knocked out. I went ouch. Was mountain biking and at the bottom of a very steep hill after useless braking on a wet trail. I flew over my handlebars and hit a tree. I broke the tree. Okay, it was long dead and then dusted myself off. My wife had COVID 3 times. I never got it. During that time, I had a second job working night shift at a warehouse. People getting COVID all around me. I never got it. Got tested more than I could count. I have tons of these incidences, but really I can't remember the last time I was sick. I do have a weakness. Chocolate. It's serious. Keep it away from me. Edit. I did grab a pan handle from a pan that had been in a 400-degree oven for an hour and burned my hand. Put some cream on it and bandages and was all good after a while. Edit 2. I touched a live wire in an office building years ago and got the juice real good. Blew half my fingernail off, but that was it. The shock of it was worse than the electrical shock. Now this is turning into a Final Destination thing. Story 11. I met Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez, while they were still dating, backstage at one of her concerts, because I was friends with the opening act. I went back to talk to her, which was a very cool experience, and they just walked up to us and started chatting. They were both super nice, and it was a pretty great moment as they were both at the height of their fame at the time. But for some reason, people think I'm making it up, even though I have pictures of myself with my friend from that night, LOL. Story 12. I recently had a psychic reading that was so completely spot on it really freaked me out and made me cry. The only information she had about me was my first name. I didn't pay, she didn't come to me first. There's really just absolutely no way she could have known what she did. I grew up with the internet and I know how to tell when something is fake. Completely freaked me out. She told me some stuff that may happen in the future, and if it does, then I'm going to really be freaked out, LOL. Totally changed my mindset on spirituality. Story 13. I could read the Washington Post when I was under 2 years old. I was what is called a spontaneous reader. My family evidently kept wondering why I would pick up the newspaper and stare at it as a tiny child. That is, until I asked my mom what the word gubernatorial was because I couldn't read it. She asked me why I was asking her that particular word, and I evidently told her that all the other words spoke to me, but that one didn't. So she asked me to read her the rest of the paragraph. So I did. I thought everybody could read from the time they were able to pick up a book or newspaper. It actually made raising my son difficult, because I didn't know how to teach him to read. I literally remember reading about the assassination of John F. Kennedy in the Washington Post, and I was under 2 when it happened. For some reason, I remember my wanting to read was spurred by wanting to know more about Jacqueline Kennedy, because I'm a fashionista, and she was so glamorous to me. Reading about her is some of my earliest memories of reading. Story 14. When family members pass away, I always have a gut feeling before it happens. It started when I was young. My great-grandmother passed away when I was maybe 6 or 7 at my Little League game, and as me and my father were walking back to the car, I turned to him and asked if she was dead. At the time, he didn't have a way of knowing because he didn't have a cell phone. He turned, looked at me weird and said, "No." When we get home, my mother tells him and he literally went pale. Second time was when my grandfather's brother passed away. I was at my grandfather's house, and I was pestering him to take me to McDonald's. He finally agreed, and as we sat in the drive-thru, I had this feeling of anxiety. I looked at the time in the car, and I took notice it was 7:43 p.m. We get back home, we walk in, and my aunt is sitting on the couch and tells my grandfather his brother passed away at 7:30. Mind you, my grandfather was old school, so he kept every clock ahead by 10 or so minds. It's happened so many times after that. I'm much older now, and it still freaks me the hell out. Story 15. I can play every musical instrument. You could in fact invent a new musical instrument, show me how to produce sound with it, and the general idea of how the note changes, and I could play it at a surprisingly high level within an hour or so. Also, I have often gone on stage with pro-level bands and played the entire show without charts, notes, or even the key of the songs. Just a nod if they want a solo. I can feel pitch, feel harmonic direction, and intuitively predict how a song will go. While extremely technical, switching time signatures with weird breaks is still difficult, it's rare that if you're watching the show that you'd think I was out of place. Source, fucked up brain that does this one thing really well. Story 16. Also, my brother and I have no problem believing the house we both grew up in for nearly 20 years of our lives respectively was haunted by a malevolent spirit for several years that seemed to only want to get our attention, as all the weird and unexplainable crazy shit only ever happened to myself and my brother, and not our parents. Even if they were home, we would say that something crazy happened, and they wouldn't believe us, and tell us to stop making stuff up. Both of our parents and gone now, and we still talk about how creepy and uneasy we felt in that house whenever our parents were gone, and neither one of us ever wanted to leave the other in the house alone, and how crazy we both thought it was that if anything wild ever happened to him or me, days later, something equally wild and unexplainable would happen to the other. After almost 10 years of this sort of thing happening all the time, my mom started believing us about it, and eventually, when we were both in our late teens, she had someone come and bless every corner of the house because crazy shit started happening to her too. But nothing ever happened to my dad. He didn't not believe us, though. He just found it as bizarre as we did that none of the crazy stuff that happened ever happened to him. The crazier part? My dad was a relatively healthy man with only mild health concerns, but when he was 54 years old, he died unexpectedly in that house from a massive heart attack. My mom said he was walking around the house talking incoherently and not making any sense. Kept saying he was too hot, then too cold. Was walking around complaining every bone in his body hurt, and when he fell asleep next to her with a cold pack on his chest, because he said he felt too hot. She woke up later and fell asleep in the other room, and when she woke up, she went to go check on him and he was cold. He had died 4 hours before she woke up. She woke up at 3 in the morning from what she thought was her mother's voice, nagging her and yelling at her, who had been dead for several years, telling her to go check on my dad, and when she woke up, she scared herself because she said, "Okay, Mom, I'm going." Still to this day, childhood friends who stayed the night at our house don't believe us because whenever they stayed the night, nothing happened. Story 17. I can get a pretty good read on someone in about 5 minutes. It is a combination of what they say /tone/body language. I just seem to pick up on it way better and faster than others. It always amazes me how other people don't see it. Like when people are all surprised when some nice person turns out to be some asshole, I am like, yeah, I knew that. I am shocked when people fall for other people's bullshit, but if I ever try to warn them about it, I get made out to be the crazy one. I have been wrong maybe a couple times. One of the times I was wrong, my mom wasn't. My buddy's wife turned out to be a cheating psycho. She was really good, and not letting the mask slip for years. First time my mom met her, she told me she thought she was shifty. So yeah, my mom is even better at it than I am. Story 18. I have one of the rarest medical conditions, but it has only hindered me in emotional, relational ways and not seemed to cause the lowering of IQ to the point that I need government help /in-home health care. According to research that came out after I was diagnosed and cured with brain surgery, it is expected that a person would have a personality change, depression, difficulty with relationships, friends, etc., but also that functionally, IQ would drop, and the ability of one to drive and do a normal min-wage type job had good chance of disappearing. I am a teacher of 14 years, and have a master's and live on my own. I'm not doing as well as some, but not as badly as others. I don't really have friends or a significant other, but I do think my particular brand of disorder has something more to do with that than DRS think. Story 19, I love being outside. Nobody believes it because I'm always indoors, but it's because I have very low heat tolerance and live in an area that is absolutely sweltering for 90% of the year. I'm also a glow-in-the-dark, practically translucent white gal, and any meaningful sun exposure will result in a painful sunburn. Melanoma runs strongly in my dad's family, so I'm trying to avoid getting that too. I periodically forget to reapply sunscreen, and even when I do it religiously, I often still find myself burning. So I end up hiding indoors all the time from both the heat and the UV radiation. But anytime I'm somewhere more pleasant, like the New England area or Alaska, I'm happy to be outside hiking, fishing, boating, or just admiring the beauty. Everyone is always surprised. Story 20. Once I was on a break from work, was grabbing lunch from a Taco Bell across the street with a coworker. I decided to go next door to grab a pretzel and a drink from Wawa, while my coworker got her order at TB. While I was in between the two lots, they only had a small grass patch between them. I checked a voicemail on my phone from a number I didn't know. It was a woman screaming for help, like genuinely distressed, not some fake actor scream. I listened to the whole thing. It wasn't super long. IDR how long exactly? Confused as hell, and went to listen to it again to confirm what I'd heard so I could figure out what to do. When I listened to it again, immediately after, it was just a normal, random, completely innocent voicemail. I don't think anyone I've told this story to, but it absolutely happened. It was around April or March of 2018, right outside of one of the back employee entrances to SeaWorld Orlando, where I worked at the time. I never really believed in the paranormal before then, but I'm a hell of a lot more open nowadays, even if I'm still a bit of skeptic. Pretty sure I will never find out what happened. Story 21. I've predicted my grandma dying as a child. She was already in a hospice for severe cancer in her digestive tract. The night before she died, I had a dream about my grandpa in a suit waiting for her in a field of flowers, and her running to him. She had MS and couldn't walk anymore, and him being so happy she was finally with him. I told my parents, because I felt different than with other dreams, like a weird something is about to happen feeling kept lingering. Not long after we got the call, she died in the hospice.